Wir sind heute etwas weit weg von zu Hause, und zwar in San José in Kalifornien. Und der Grund dafür ist, dass hier die Science-Fiction Worldcon stattfindet. Wir waren letztes Jahr ebenfalls auf der Veranstaltung, aber da war sie in Helsinki, ein bisschen näher zu Hause dran. Aber wir sind wieder in Begleitung von Werner Fuchs unterwegs, also dem DSA- und Fanpro-Schöpfer. Und wir stöbern hier ein bisschen rum, ob wir Leute finden, die wir schon kennen, ob wir neue Leute kennenlernen und was hier so alles passiert und vorgestellt wird. We with Ted Williams, creator of, among a lot of other things, the Otherland series and the Außerdem books, and I want to ask you about a little bit else, because you're also someone who kind of dances between the genres and between comics and novels and things. And one thing I find especially interesting is that you're also writing young adult, all ages novels. Mm-hmm. Do you approach them differently from your more mature books?
Well, there's always a small difference, but the fact is I don't think we approach writing fiction for younger readers any different than we do talking to younger people. We have kids who are now in their late teens and early 20s, meaning our own kids, but we've always talked to them very much as though they were intelligent beings. We didn't ever talk down to them. As with the young adult novels, we'll sometimes simplify something that we don't expect them to know about very well or something like that. But I think the key is you don't ever treat them like they are less than human. That's just a mistake in writing of any kind, to try and write down to an audience. You have to find what is common in you and the audience and write directly to that.
I can imagine that you can also learn a lot for writing for a mature audience from getting that contact, from trying to write for younger people. Or is there something that you take from that kind of work for everything else?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I've always liked to do different kinds of things, because there are lessons and pleasures for a writer in everything. And certainly having to strip things down, in a sense, for a shorter book like the YA books, while still keeping the things that are important, has always been, an interesting challenge. I'm not going to be able to use 3 or 4 sentences to describe something, just because of the brevity of the books, but I still want to make that description stick with the reader, or cause that moment of recognition. So yeah, it's a different process, and you always learn from different processes.
Have you ever run into a problem like changing from novels to comics, or something that you see, I can't do this the way I'm used to, and where you really had to step back and learn something new?
Oh, well, I'm learning something new all the time. But part of the reason that I have tried other things, as I mentioned, is because I enjoy that experiment. So by the time I've started writing comics or something, I've spent time usually thinking about, what am I going to be doing different? What do I have to do that will be unfamiliar? What do I need to learn here? So yeah, for me, that's a big and exciting part of trying something new.
And you're also partnering up with your wife as a writer, and I'm always curious about how couples and how couple writers go about this. Is one of you the planner and the other one is the one who writes more, or how do you go about it?
Well, we basically try to alternate things, but I'm kind of a structuralist freak. I really like thinking about story and thinking about the architecture of story. And Deborah, although very, very good in her own right, is still fairly new with some of these things. So she tends to say to me, well, you can take the lead on this, but then she always comes up with ideas of her own also. So we go back and forth. And then what we've done mostly with these books is Deborah has written a draft, and then I've redrafted, and then, we'll kind of go back and forth between us until we feel satisfied with it.
What is coming up next? There are people looking forward because there were rumors there's going to be a new Ordinary Farm book that you're working on, or things like that.
We're working on a new Ordinary Farm book. I am about this close also from going back to Otherland to do some Otherland work. I've been writing some short fiction, and that has gotten me interested in going back, and the story is bubbling up in the back of my mind now for a return to Otherland. So I'm thinking about that very seriously, and of course I'm in the middle of finishing this Oostenrijk book, and I have other projects that don't have anything to do with either of those things, and I may be doing possibly some comic book work again. So many things on the horizon, but at the moment right now I'm kind of concentrating on the Oostenrijk-based stuff and the Otherland-based stuff, and getting, finally after all these years, the third book of the Ordinary Farm books finished, Der Tinker Farm. So.
Yeah, the German, the German version, Tinker Farm, right? And one last thing, which was kind of a pet peeve for me. I've always wondered with the huge Oostenrijk thing, hinging on people misinterpreting, basically, poem.
Yes.
Sorry, I was looking
Yes.
for the English word, a poem. Is there kind of a little bit of commentary on how people read fiction and how people read these things?
Oh, absolutely, but it's also a commentary on one of the tropes of the field that annoyed me, that when I was first kind of contemplating writing fantasy and science fiction, one of the many kind of things that was just carried over without any thought, it seemed to me, by newer writers, were a lot of these kind of old elements of prophecy and things like that. So I was always really irritated that this kind of stuff was brought in and nobody ever questioned it, you know? So without wanting to give away one of the key things of the whole Oostenrijk series, I mean, definitely I was playing with the idea of prophecy. I was playing with the idea of what if the world seems to have a determined reality or fate or whatever, but in reality it's no more that than our world. So that's kind of the way I tend to work. I tend to sort of undercut these sort of supernatural forces, keeping their eyes on human beings and helping them out with everything and sending them useful rhymes to remember so that they can foretell the future. I'm not a determinist. You know, I tend to think things like that are mostly happy myth. So that's how it tends to work out in my books, sometimes unhappy myth.
Du läufst, bei mir laufen die Augen, wenn ich diese Sachen sehe, aber ich habe viel davon, und Sachen wie Amazing, da bin ich nicht so gut mit. Bei mir zu Hause ist eigentlich eher die Konkurrenz von Astounding angesagt, oder Weird Tales. Über Weird Tales haben wir ja mal was gebracht. Astounding steht noch aus. Mayri ist schon ganz entsetzt.
Ich bin überhaupt nicht entsetzt. Ich frage mich, ob du hier noch irgendwie Lücken schließen willst.
Ich würde Lücken schließen, aber wie gesagt, ich habe meine Wantlist zu Hause vergessen, aber ich weiß natürlich ungefähr, was mir fehlt. Aber wenn du in einem Bereich bist, wo du dreistellig hinlegen musst für ein Magazin und du weißt nicht, ob du es hast, dann fängt es an, weh zu tun.
Ja, das wäre ein ungünstiger Doppelkauf.
Das wäre ungünstig.
Das heißt, erstmal wird nur bewundert, nicht gekauft.
Ich gucke natürlich diese Sachen seit Jahrzehnten immer mit großem Vergnügen an. Solche Cover wie hier. Wir haben hier Wonder Stories. Das ist von Hugo Gernsback rausgegeben, der mit Amazing Stories 1926 auch das allererste Science-Fiction-Magazin der Welt herausbrachte. Und nachdem der Hugo benannt ist, die Verleihung erfolgt am Sonntagabend, und der George Martin, der schmeißt da immer die Hugo Losers Party, wie wir ja wissen. Weil er nie einen gekriegt hat für einen Roman. Er hat viele, ja, nicht viele, aber eine Handvoll bekommen für Kurzgeschichten, Novellas und so, aber er hat noch nie einen Hugo bekommen für eines seiner Hauptwerke, also sprich einen richtigen Roman. Und Leute wie das rotzige Potter-Kind hat ihm die weggeschnappt.
Wenn er mehr schreiben würde, wären seine Chancen besser.
Das schwöre ich dir.
Bernhard Henn ist hier in der Menge aufgetaucht und wir haben ihn kurz zur Rede gestellt. Was treibt dich nach San José? Ich habe das Gefühl, du bist für so eine Con hier.
Ja, ich bin auf der Worldcon in San José und versuche ja Werbung zu machen für meine Werke, was kläglich scheitert. Mich kennen nicht mal die Chinesen.
Was schaust du dir sonst an? Bist du hier für Vorträge oder was unternimmst du?
Ich gehe tatsächlich auf die Panels, habe gleich am ersten Tag ein sehr plastisches Panel gehabt über Verletzungen im Schwertkampf mit sehr vielen Bildern von einer Ärztin gehalten, die echte Bilder aus ihrem Krankenhaus mitgebracht hat. Es war ein anhaltender Eindruck doch, dieser Vortrag. Davon nehme ich ganz sicher was fürs Schreiben mit nach Hause. Und gestern hatte ich die Chance, kurz noch Peter S. Beagle zu treffen und ein Buch von ihm signiert zu kriegen. Großartig. Also ich liebe, seit ich glaube 10 bin, das letzte Einhorn. Und ihn zu treffen und mit ihm über Deutschland, Stuttgart und Bücher kurz zu plaudern, war toll.
Das heißt, auch du fanboyst hier ein bisschen?
Ja, aber definitiv.
Okay, dann viel Erfolg dabei.
Danke dir.
We're with the Foglios of Studio Foglio, the creators, authors, artists of Girl Genius, which is, I dare say, the steampunk comic online.
Oh, that's very nice of you.
We never thought it would run for 18 years, so not that we're complaining. You know.
You haven't only kind of been a pioneer considering this kind of comic, but also for the online comic community, I think so.
Oh, there were a lot of people doing online comics before us, and in fact, I learned from a lot of them. I went and looked at how they were doing things, and I did a lot of thinking about how to make a webcomic based on how other people ran theirs and what seemed to work when I was trying to use their comics and what I saw being complained about.
Yep. What we did first is we were running Girl Genius as a regular periodical comic, and we were like, why are we doing this? Why don't we just, instead of asking for money for the periodicals and the collections, which was in effect doubling our work, we just started giving it away for free online and then expecting people to pay for the collections. And a lot of people in the industry and a lot of store owners were like, you people are nuts. And, well, I guess we were, but it tripled our sales in the first year.
It did, but we did, it really was looking at the other webcomics and saying, why aren't we doing it like that? That's a really good way to do it.
It is a really good way.
Look at what all those young people are doing. We should do that too.
And you're always working together. Can you talk a little bit about the process and who comes up with which ideas and how you work towards a final product?
Okay, well, we started writing Girl Genius in 1993, and we worked out, the main arc of the story, and because there were so many stories that start and then they kind of stop because no one expected to still be doing it for that while, and they never figured out an ending. Well, we figured out our ending, so we're good there.
We do have our ending, but I tell people it's like you have the sketch for the painting, but filling in all those details is still a lot of work, and then sometimes you start filling in a detail and you realize that doesn't feel right, you need to change something, and so we know where we're going, but sometimes how we get there is a little convoluted.
Yeah. So, around 2000, we actually started producing the book, and it was doing very well. And then in 2005, that's when we went online.
That's when we went online.
And everything changed.
Yeah. We do a lot of talking about the story together, and then when it comes down to it, Phil sits down with paper. He does a storyboard. I look at it and I say, it's terrible, I hate it, do it over again. Or I say, it's wonderful, it's perfect, I love it, let's go.
Those are the good days.
Those are the good days, right. And then he draws the pictures, I scan them. We send them to Cheyenne Wright, our wonderful color artist, and he makes the colors happen. And then I put them all on the internet, and I put them all into a book form.
Right. I am, in fact, one of the few people who still actually draw on paper. That's a book of the actual pages from the book. We that's what we scan, and it goes from there, and then we're done with them. That's why, so I can sell them.
And then you're done with them.
Yes, that's it.
And then I get them.
Yeah.
And then it goes into a book.
But after that, I don't care. I'm on to the next thing.
Korshak, and he's probably the one who's seen the most Worldcons, at least potentially, because you've been at the first one. How many do you have under your belt?
Well, I was the only person that went to the first 15 Worldcons. The most famous fan that we've ever had, Forey Ackerman, went to only 14 of them. And I used to kid him because he was Mr. Science Fiction. You've heard of him, I'm sure. And but he had only done 14 of the first 15, and I had done all 15. Then I dropped out of the field and came back in the 1980s, and been going to Worldcons ever since. But I did go to the very first one, which was in New York in 1939. And that's where I met some of my dearest friends, Ray Bradbury, and so on.
So you've been with the authors and with the fandom from the very beginning.
That's very true.
And these were the days of the first fan wars with the Futurians as leftists in 1939, right?
Yes, indeed. Well, they had that famous feud between the people that put on the first Worldcon and the Futurians, and the Futurians were barred from going into the convention hall, and there was a very bad reaction in the rest of fandom to having excluded them. But they were a very famous group. The Futurians were, among other people, Isaac Asimov, Frederick Pohl, Donald Wollheim, and so on. So they were a very famous group of people in the science fiction world, but once again were excluded in the 1939 Worldcon.
So fandom has always been a little bit, not everyone agrees with everyone since the very first Worldcon.
That's kind of true about the rest of the world too, isn't it?
How would you say, not just in size and everything, the Worldcon has changed? What would you say is the most glaring difference to when it started?
Oh, you mean the difference in fandom?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what the difference was. In 1939, and prior to that, there were probably maybe a couple of hundred fans in the entire United States. It was a new thing. And everybody knew everybody else. So that if you were traveling across the United States and you were, let's say, in Wyoming, you know that Elmer Perdue was there. If you were in New Mexico, you knew that Jack Spear was there. These were all famous early fans. And there were only a couple of hundred of them from the entire United States. And so, once again, it was a very in-group, and everyone knew everybody else. Now there are thousands of people who are fans, and that's wonderful. But I'm only saying that is the difference between 1939 and 2012.
Thank you very much, and hoping to a lot more Worldcons seeing you.
I'm sorry?
I'm hoping to see you on a lot more Worldcons to come.
Well, thank you very much. I second the desire of being around a longer time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mark Zickery is here to promote his project Space Command, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more because we've done some things in science fiction.
That's right.
But first, let's talk about Space Command.
Yes.
What kind of movie is this?
Well, it's basically the 2-hour pilot of a new TV series, and it stars Doug Jones of Shape of Water and Star Trek Discovery, and Robert Picardo of, Star Trek Voyager, Stargate Atlantis, The Orville, and Mira Furlan, and Bill Mumy, and Bruce Boxleitner from Babylon 5. And it basically is a hopeful vision of the future. I thought in these times, I wanted to create a show that would inspire people like Star Trek inspired me when I was a kid, that could say, we'll have crises, we'll have challenges, but we have to reach across boundaries and barriers, and with compassion. And that's how we create a better future. That's the only way we can oppose the fear and the divisiveness and the chaos that can put us into small groups. And so I didn't want to trust the network or the studios to cut me off at pilot script or cut me off at pilot. So I reached out to my audience, and my audience gave me $1 million to shoot the 2-hour pilot. And it's a hopeful vision of the future. It starts 60 years from now. It follows 150 years in the lives of 4 families, and it's 5 generations of those 4 families as we colonize the solar system and jump to the stars. And we've shot the first 2 hours. We've shot 40 minutes of the second 2 hours, and I've written the first 8 hours of the 12-hour season. So it's very exciting to be here at Worldcon premiering the first half hour of the pilot.
And the people who, like me, missed the presentation yesterday because I was in another panel.
Okay.
We can watch it on YouTube.
Yes, I have a YouTube channel called Mr. Sci-Fi, SCI-FI, and I post about once a week about science fiction books and TV shows and movies. And I've written for many of the iconic shows. And you can watch the first half hour of Space Command on my channel, Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi on YouTube.
And I kind of have the feeling that maybe the fact that you got a lot of people who are great names in sci-fi because you've worked with them before. Is it kind of a friendship thing?
Yes. Well, more than friendship, they also very much like my work, and they like what I stand for, because compassion and active compassion is not something that's promulgated much in television or in films. Usually the meanest person wins, the worst person wins, you know, and as great as a show like Breaking Bad is, or Battlestar Galactica, you don't want that to be the lesson that you pass on to your children, that cynicism is the way one should live. You have to believe in the possibility of human goodness. And I do. It's the core of my being. And so Doug Jones, I wrote a book with Guillermo del Toro recently, and I won the Saturn Award and met Doug Jones at the Saturn Awards. Of course, he's the creature in Shape of Water. He's in many of Guillermo's movies. And I took him to lunch, and we just became fast friends, and I said, I'm going to write a role for you. And he plays a synthetic human, a replicant, an android, in Space Command, and he's terrific. And I met Robert Picardo through Star Trek, because I wrote for Star Trek The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. And I met Mira Furlan and Bill Mumy and Bruce Boxleitner when I was writing for Babylon 5. So it was all like being with my family.
You also wrote, and I just asked you which episodes were yours on Deep Space Nine, and you wrote one of my favorite all-time episodes, the one that deals with the start of science fiction and how people were marginalized.
Yes.
The episode that is back in the 50s.
Yes, it's called It's Far Beyond the Stars. And I came up with that episode. I was working as a producer on a TV show called Sliders, but I came up with that episode of Deep Space Nine because I grew up in the science fiction world, you know, and I went to science fiction conventions, and I met Theodore Sturgeon and Harlan Ellison and all these wonderful writers, and Harlan Ellison and Ted Sturgeon became friends and mentors. And I was very interested in how they were writing for a penny a word or 5 cents a word for Galaxy magazine or Astounding, and they were writing for the love of it. And I wanted to talk about why science fiction was important, what our roots were, and why it's so vital to speak your truth. And that in speaking your truth and in creating a future, writing a future that is a possibility that doesn't exist in the present, you can help bring that future into being. I mean, certainly Ray Bradbury, who was a dear friend of mine and a wonderful mentor, you know, he and Arthur C. Clarke and Robert Heinlein and Isaac Asimov, they had this vision of a future of us landing on the moon and traveling to space. And we take it as a given now that that's just obvious what humanity would do. But it's not obvious. And they and the scientists, you know, Wernher von Braun and all the wonderful scientists working on the Apollo program, they made that happen through their imagination and their will and their hard work. So I'm a strong believer in, I don't think science fiction is passive or trivial or unimportant. I think it's very important because our dreams and the world we build come from what we look at, what we read, what we talk about, what we have the courage to take hold of and make happen. So I'm very proud to be working on Space Command and have worked on all these wonderful television shows.
And I think that the fandom and the world in itself can use more positive visions of the future. As you said, we have lots of dystopian things. I'm missing the things with a positive outlook to the future.
Yes, and you know, it's funny, I also wrote a book called The Twilight Zone Companion about a TV show that was The Twilight Zone that was done in the 50s and 60s. And when you look at Rod Serling, who was the creator of that show, or Gene Roddenberry, of course, who created Star Trek, we tend to forget that that was the time of the Cold War and nuclear Armageddon, the possibility that humanity would be wiped out, and the civil rights movement and riots in all of our major cities and the Vietnam War. These were dark, dark, dark times full of all sorts of terrible things. But both Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry and Ray Bradbury were not pessimists. They were optimists. They were not cynics. And they were weaving cautionary tales, but they were also creating a vision of where we might go as a race that was bigger and better and finer than what we'd ever done.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And here's to a positive future.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Hello to Germany.
We're with John Picasso, who's very, very busy on this convention because you're the artist guest of honor.
Yep.
And apart from your artwork being on every single badge here, what are the honors and also the duties of the guest of honor?
Guest of honor, you are expected to work 10 times as hard as a regular guest, quite frankly. But no, it's tremendous. I mean, guest of honor at a Worldcon is basically like a lifetime achievement award. You get it once in your life, and it's really something supposed to happen when you're much older, you know, kind of at the end of your career, and I'm not at the end of my career. Let's hope not. But I'm having an amazing time, and as a guest of honor, the way I look at it is you're not just there to receive all the adoration and the honors. It's really a platform to give back. So I've tried to bring in 50 new talents from Mexico and from Mexican-American heritage. We call it the Mexicanics Initiative. And it's probably the best thing, my favorite thing I've done as guest of honor is bringing these new talents into the field and into the convention. And they're just blowing it up right now. They're doing amazing work. I'm also the Hugo Awards Master of Ceremonies. The Hugo Awards are tomorrow night, and I'm ready. It's going to be an amazing night.
I've seen a lot of people with the badges with the Mexicanics initiative, and you're also bringing Mexican culture to the con in the Loteria artwork that you brought here. That everyone has La Calavera on the badge.
I got calaveras everywhere.
And you also got a lot of other ones. Forgive me, I'm not exactly sure what Loteria is. I just know it's a card game, a traditional.
Absolutely. So what it is it's a Mexican pastime that's been in existence for centuries, and it's basically you play it like bingo. So in bingo you have a random assortment of letters and numbers, and you have these little play cards, and so everybody is listening for the letters and numbers combinations, and when you get 4 in a row you yell bingo. Same thing in Mexico, except we use a lot of very odd icons, from like the mundane to the magical. And so I started putting these things down into drawings. And it kind of exploded into this project that is now sort of a series of grande cards, series of posters. And as I've been telling people at the show, it will be a book, a formal book of stories and art that I am looking to pitch within the next 4 to 6 months to publishers. And there will be a formal game thereafter. And it's one of my babies right now. Yeah, Loteria.
And I have the feeling that it might spread a lot further.
It's going to go beyond Mexico, let's put it that way. And really that's the thing, is that I'm trying to take something that's exclusively a brown thing right now and making it a universally accessible everybody thing. So that it doesn't matter if you're Mexican or brown, you can be white, you can be Asian, you can be black, you can be from any culture. Then it becomes a human thing. I'm trying to take something that's exclusively one culture right now and making it be something that no matter where you are, you can enjoy it. It doesn't have to be just of that culture, of my culture.
How do you go about redesigning those traditional icons? For instance, the La Sirena, which has kind of a dark, moody feeling to it, also with the helmet. And are you more like a method guy who sits down and just thinks about it and then works on the picture in your head, or are you kind of exploring it while you work on it?
I'm a faucet that doesn't turn off. That's what I am. I'm a faucet that doesn't turn off. I mean, it's constant with me. The images are constantly flowing, changing, morphing, evolving, being reevaluated. This is what I live, eat, breathe, sleep. I don't stop thinking of it. I'm the guy who, when Christmas is happening and everybody's unwrapping their presents, my family and my friends, I'm sitting there drawing and working out my jobs while all that's happening. I know it's pathological, but if your family allows you to do it, you do it. So literally, it's a faucet that doesn't turn off. And so I can't say where the things come from. They just come, but it's because the faucet doesn't turn off. And so I feel lucky for that, and I enjoy it. So, we're here, and I do it.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and I'm absolutely looking forward to the full set of the cards.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Take care.
Wir waren gerade bei den Hugo Awards, saßen irgendwo im hinteren Drittel und haben zugeschaut, wie die ganzen Sachen verteilt wurden. Viele Leute waren nicht da, viele haben sich sehr kurz gehalten. Deswegen war es die kürzesten Hugo Awards, die du jemals erlebt hast.
Ich habe 13 Hugo Award Verleihungen gesehen und das war wirklich die kürzeste. Kürzer als 2 Stunden.
Wir wollen ein bisschen Nachlese machen zu ein paar von den Preisen, bei denen ich mich sehr gefreut habe und bei manchen, die mich überrascht haben. Und erstmal ganz ehrlich, wie viele kanntest du überhaupt?
In der Mehrzahl kannte ich sie nicht, das muss ich gestehen. Den Comicpreis, den kannte ich, den Filmpreis kannte ich. Bei einigen der anderen Titel konnte ich wenigstens sagen, ich habe schon mal den einen oder anderen Autorennamen gehört. Die Werke kannte ich allerdings überwiegend nicht. Was immer das jetzt bedeuten mag für Übersetzungen ins Deutsche oder mein Engagement für den amerikanischen Buchmarkt. Die Veranstaltung an sich aber fand ich überwältigend. Ich finde es großartig, dass es so etwas für fantastische Literatur gibt. Und für mich war es das erste Mal, dass ich hier war und ich werde ganz sicher wiederkommen.
Kommen wir zu den paar Preisen, die ich auf jeden Fall erwähnen will. Erstmal die Best Graphic Story. Monstrous, Volume 2, The Blood. Letztes Jahr haben die auch schon gewonnen, die beiden Mädels von Monstrous, die beiden Damen von Monstrous, Marjorie Liu und Sana Takeda. Sana Takeda hat diesmal sogar direkt 2 Hugos mitgenommen. Ja. Ziemlich beeindruckend. Und absolut verdient, auch wenn ich wirklich zerrissen war, weil es waren noch Paper Girls und Saga mal wieder nominiert. Schwere Entscheidung, oder?
Schwere Entscheidung, aber hey, schau rein in die Comics. Hier, Takeda ist einfach großartig in den Illustrationen. Und ich gestehe, ich wähle nicht nur nach Story, sondern auch nach den Bildern. Die spielen eine Rolle in der Graphic Novel und ich finde ihn einfach überzeugend.
Ja, also absolut. Wir hatten Monstrous auch schon mal vorgestellt. Ich denke, den zweiten Band, den müssen wir jetzt nochmal nachholen. Ich habe ihn schon zu Hause liegen und wir haben es irgendwie verpasst, den in eine Late-Night-Show zu packen. Best Dramatic Presentation Shortform, was mehr oder weniger auf Serien hinausläuft. Ich hatte auf eine Black Mirror-Folge gehofft, USS Callister. Schwer zu beschreiben, aber es ist so ein bisschen gleichzeitig eine Persiflage auf 60er-Jahre-Science-Fiction, aber auch ein bisschen auf Leute im Fandom. Aber gewonnen hat The Good Place, The Trolley Problem, von dem ich vorher nichts wusste, aber jetzt will ich es unbedingt schauen.
Ja, das sah sehr vielversprechend aus, sehr lustig und ich kenne die Serie selber auch nicht.
Ja, aber ich denke, das werde ich nachholen. Auf irgendeinem Streaming-Service muss es sie geben. Hast du schon mal von gehört?
Nein, ich habe es nicht gesehen, aber nach den wenigen Minuten, die es da zu sehen gab, dachte ich auch, das muss ich sehen.
Definitiv. Bei Best Dramatic Presentation Longform, also mehr oder weniger Filme, war ich ziemlich überrascht. Gewonnen hat Wonder Woman. Was ich ein bisschen seltsam fand angesichts der Tatsache, dass das Get Out nominiert war, dass Blade Runner 2049 nominiert war, dass Shape of Water nominiert war und auch Thor Ragnarok und Star Wars The Last Jedi. Also irgendwie komisch.
Ich denke, das ist eine Aufteilung in ernste Sachen und in weniger ernste Sachen. 3 ernste und 3 weniger ernste. Die ersten 3 waren Tiefganggeschichten und die letzten 3 sind mehr Action-Dinger. Oder
dann,
ist das verkehrt?
Doch, ich glaube, das passt ganz gut. Die anderen sind nicht so actionlastig auf jeden Fall.
Also großartig waren alle Filme, die nominiert sind, aber ich bekenne mich dazu, ich bin schon ein Wonder Woman Fanboy. Ich fand den Film klasse, ich habe ihn gemocht. Wir haben eben darüber diskutiert, über das Ende kann man streiten, aber alles davor super und ich mochte auch den Humor sehr.
Ja. Dann kommen wir zu der großen, dicken Abteilung zu Best Novel und es hat gewonnen The Stone Sky. N.K. Jemisin, worauf du sagtest, das ist ein Rekord.
N.K. Jemisin hat zum 3. Mal hintereinander den Haupt-Hugo gewonnen. Das gab es noch nie. Sie ist der Superstar der Science-Fiction heute.
Wow. Sie wirkte auch irgendwie so, als würde das sie sehr, wie sagt man, validieren, als wäre das wirklich ein sehr, sehr guter Schlussstrich unter sehr viel langer Arbeit und sehr viel Vorbereitung.
Bei ihrer Rede kam zutage, dass sie offensichtlich erhebliche Widerstände zu überwinden hatte, bis sie dahin kam, wo sie jetzt ist.
Es gab auch Standing Ovations. Insgesamt super Stimmung wieder, alles war sehr locker. Nur eine Person ist auf der Bühne hingefallen, um es vorsichtig zu sagen. Ich fand, es war ein wirklich sehr schöner, gelungener Abend. Mal schauen, was sonst noch heute so passiert. Und wie war das? Du bist jetzt hooked. Nächstes Mal auch dabei?
Ich bin wieder dabei, ja doch. Also es hat mich angefixt und Dublin ist ja auch ein bisschen näher als San José. Ich denke schon, dass ich das schaffen werde.
Nächstes Mal weniger weit fliegen.
Das Bier wird besser sein.
Das werden wir sehen.
Du warst in den falschen Bars, Werner.
Ich trinke doch gar kein Bier. Die Leute wissen doch, dass ich Wein trinke.
Dann spotte nicht über Bier.
Bernhard ist derjenige, der hier die meisten Partys abgecheckt hat. Ich nehme mal an, so wird es auch weitergehen. Vielen Dank auf jeden Fall an euch beide und vielen Dank euch für das Zuschauen. So, ich bin ein bisschen durch. Vielen Dank.
Watch me, just follow every move. Touch me, let me know you want it too. Don't tell what you need.